everybody, my name is Mel, welcome back, and today we're going to do a pretty chill video talking about the top fantasy indie books on my TBR. So I have a list of 10 books that I really want to get to, and then 5 honorable mentions that I definitely want to get to. This is inspired by the SPFBO 8 that is hosted by Mark Lawrence. This is an indie awards, and it's really been drawing my attention toward indie fantasy books. And so I'm hoping that once we get this list narrowed down a little bit to do a vlog of some of those books, but then I also wanted to do just a general indie fantasy vlog featuring some of the books from this list as well. So I hope that you're able to find something new and interesting, and I hope that I love them. If you're not familiar with like indie fantasy, a lot of times I feel like people will assume that if a book is not traditionally published, it's a bad book, but that's not really the case. A lot of authors will choose to do indie publishing because they can get their book out there a lot quicker, or because they can make more money depending on who it is and what kind of marketing they have, or they want more freedom. They don't want publishers to tell them how much limits they can actually push, or maybe it's just a story that is not doing as well in the traditional market and they want to fill a gap. So there's a ton of reasons why authors will self-publish or choose to go with a smaller publisher, and I really just wanted to help kind of expose these books and get them out there, get them on your radar. So again, hopefully we all find something that we love. I just, like I said, made a list. These are in no particular order of indie books that were kind of on my radar that I was really looking forward to. Some of these are SPFBO nominees for this 8th round. Some of them have been in the past. Some of them have nothing to do with the contest at all. So the first one I want to talk about is Mark of Kings by Bryce O'Connor. And from what I can tell, this one has a beastly companion, and it is in a world where dragons rule the sky, and then a job for our main character goes sideways, and people are starting to like rise from graves. But Declan has decided that he has a choice. Either he can run from the ancient horror that is starting to develop and try to take over the land, or he can look at the threat in the face and try to conquer it. And the tagline says, "Centuries pass after all, but the blood of kings does not fade." This one is probably like one of the tip top on my TBR. It looks incredible. It sounds incredible. It gets really good reviews, so I'm hoping to get to it very soon. Then we have one that I know Cassidy from Covers Cassidy has mentioned before, and that is Thanks of War by E.J. Noble. This is another indie fantasy book featuring a military and government and a king that is executed, and a war that starts despite the wishes of a godlike All-Mother. I'm not really sure who the All-Mother is, but I'm interested in knowing more. Kavara is a general at odds with her superiors, and she's been betrayed by her own people, and then she was left for dead. Apparently, she's been plagued by visions of a figure known as the Shadow Woman, and there's a conflict between men and gods alike. So again, this is another gods, military, and inspired story, kind of right up my alley if you've been watching my channel long and you know kind of the stories that I like. So definitely want to get to this one. It is pretty like underrated. Amazon and Goodreads don't have very many ratings for it, so I definitely wanted to get it out there and let you know that it exists, and it sounds really good. Then we have Free the Darkness by Calcade. This one, I've seen this author kind of buzzing around. I think they've got a new book coming out here pretty soon. This is about a young boy who, when everything he's ever known is destroyed, he is yanked out of this secret secluded fortress from which he was raised. And he really wants to like find his purpose and find the one man who may hold the clues as to who he is. But strange things are happening across the kingdom. It does sound kind of generic, but it gets really good reviews, and I've heard some great things about Calcade, so I'm hopeful that this one is going to really do something different than just the general blurb describes. But still, even a generic fantasy, it sounds pretty good. Then we have a Kings Radiance, L.R. Schultz. This one I've actually read the first couple of chapters, and then just had to move on to a couple of other things and got distracted. But this one sounds really good. It's about our main character, or about 3 siblings, and it opens with one of our main characters being able to harness the power of the sun, and he's what we call a Radiance. And then there are these military forces that are coming in to have a discussion with his father, who is the king, and he and his sister are kind of banished and sent away because the king doesn't want them seen by these new forces. But of course they don't listen, and his sister decides that he decides that he wants to get a better view of these creatures that are coming into their land. And his sister, obviously goes to help him out, try to keep him in line, and she gets collected essentially for her violet eyes. And then we flash forward many years later, and she is still a prisoner of this group. I forget what the group is called. I know I keep calling them group, but it has slipped my mind. And they're trying to rescue her, and then Isha is kind of the centerpiece of this art gallery, and she is trying to get away. The premise of this one sounds really cool, but the execution so far has been really good as well, so it's like on the top of my list of books that I absolutely need to get to as soon as possible. And then we have an arc that I received from the author, and this one actually sounds really, really good, and I'm hoping to get to it very, very soon. It's The Last Keeper by J.V. Hilliard. And this one is about a young boy who has prophetic visions and is the keeper of the forbidden. From what I can tell, there's a bunch of different keepers in this world, and they all have certain roles that they play. And then there's also an elven princess who is hiding a secret because she is a diplomat between the elven race and the humans. And there is a recurring nightmare, and the realm is hanging in the balance. So the magic system sounds really cool. The blurb doesn't give me a whole lot, but I am very interested in this keeper and what their job is and what they do. So very much so looking forward to this one. I actually have the audio of it as well, so hopefully I can get to it sooner rather than later. And thank you so much to I don't know if it was his marketing director and the author that reached out to me and asked if I wanted to review it. Of course I do. Then we have A Touch of Light by Thiago Abdallah. Did I completely butcher that? If I did, I'm so sorry. Just kind of reading the initial tagline because I liked the way it was phrased. A sprawling epic fantasy where religion and politics are one. Griffin riders roam the skies and a looming blight threatens to tear everything down. That sounds really, really cool. So it's about, from one side of the kingdom, death is shamed and they don't mourn, but on the other side of the kingdom, in the southern side, I believe, they feel that death is all that really keeps the earth alive and keeps everything moving in the world. And madness is now spreading, and a prince he wants to bring his dead lover back to worthiness, and they're going to have to fight the madness to save the kingdom that is about to come for them all. So that sounds really interesting. It looks like there's going to be a little bit of necromancy involved. There's a madness that's going to take over. I don't know if that's coming from the magic system or if it's a blight that's settling over the land, but this one sounds really, really interesting, so I'm hoping to get to it very, very soon. Moving on to Winds of Strife by U.G. Gutman. This involves witch hunters, and the king has these group of witch hunters that are trying to eradicate witches from the land. It looks like most of the witches are women, and one of our main characters has decided to invade the witch hunters because they got tired of the misogyny and the death. But they've been there for 15 years now before being able to find a opening to take over the king and destroy the witch hunters. But of course, when you're with something that long and you're undercover, sometimes things start to take a toll. And so our main character has to fight not only his own evil desires, but the goal in which he set out to accomplish. Sounds really good. I'm very interested in the magic system. Again, I've heard similar plot lines to this before, but I'm interested to see how U.G. Gutman does it a little bit differently. Then moving on to Raven by Mitchell Hogan. This is about a woman who was transformed by demon's blood, and she is deadly beyond imagination. She was once a member of the Grim Hand, which are demonically altered assassins, but she escapes and wants to just kind of live in her own world and not be a part of that anymore. But of course, all of that is going to come back to haunt her. And now she's got to return to the world of assassins to save herself and fight a vengeful enemy. I want to know more about demonically altered assassins. That sounds really, really cool. Moving on to the second to last, The Aching God by Mike Shell. Arik is a retired, I think, mercenary that has retired to the countryside with his scars and his riches. And he's no longer seeking to look for the dark treasure and wisdom of these caves. But when he needs to save his only daughter, he's got to return to the Barrowlands. And along with his companions, he must confront dangerous and ancient civilizations. This was a 2018 SPFBO finalist. And last but not least, we have Blackstone Heart by Michael R. Fletcher. This one, from what I can tell, looks to be a little bit sci-fi fantasy, but don't quote me on that. We have our main character, Karen, who awakens alone and lost with his stone heart shattered and spread across the realm. And he has to recover it piece by piece to kind of learn more about himself and who he was. It says, a woman, a sword, and an end to sorrow, he walks the obsidian path. Doesn't really give you a whole lot to go on, but it does sound just interesting enough that I'm like, tell me more. I need to know more about this. So that is the last like official in the 10 that I want to get to. But of course, I couldn't just stop at 10. So a couple of honorable mentions is Any and All Rob J. Hayes. He was also kind enough to send me an ARC to one of his newest books that's coming out in July. So probably will get to that one very, very soon. I have not read any of his stuff yet, and I desperately, desperately want to, especially starting with, is it Along the Razor's Edge, one of the first ones? He's got multiple different series, and honestly, they all sound good, so I'm just going to pick a random one to start with. And then I've got a beetle running around my house. Good grief. Then we have Voice of War by Zach Argel. This one I have got a copy of on audio, I believe, and I've just been really wanting to read it. I don't know why I haven't yet. I don't really have an excuse, but I've got to get to this book. Then we have Elborn. Obviously, a lot of people have been talking about Elborn on BookTube recently. Military and fantasy with religious undertones. I've got it. I need to read it. I don't know what's wrong with me. Then we have Crimson Queen by Alec Hudson. This one also sounds really, really good. I want to get to it. And Nomads of the Sea by Kobe Zucker. This one is one that I know that we need to get some more exposure to so that the author will pick up the pace in writing book 2, because I've heard from Covers with Cassidy that is really, really good, and I trust her reviews, so I want to read it. I want all of you to read it so that he will write book 2 sooner rather than later, and we can get a conclusion to that awesome story. I think that is all of them, all of the 10 like top of the TBR and the 5 honorable mentions. Do you read indie fantasy? And if you do, and there was one that you absolutely loved, but I didn't mention on this list, please let me know down in the comments, because there are so many out there that I know I have missed some great ones, and I desperately, desperately want to read some more. So let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know if you found anything from this video that you plan to pick up soon, and then come back and let me know after you've read it what you thought. But I will talk to you guys in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you wanna, and I will see you soon. Bye!